Hey guys, what's up? Today I wanted to share my opinions about The Last Guardian. I was lucky enough to get an early copy and play it over the weekend, so I'd like to share some thoughts with you now. But just to preface this, I've never played Ico or Shadow of the Colossus. I bought this game based purely off of its hype and based on the majority of its review scores being pretty much, outstanding. I'm going to tell you that my experience really doesn't line up with the 8 out of 10 scores, which it's pretty much averaging across the board. So let's start, I guess, starting with the graphics. This game has some bad graphics. Like, I don't know how else to put it other than just saying they're bad. There's screen tearing worse than any other game I've ever seen. There's an abundance of frame drops, frame stuttering. The textures are horrible in this game. If you look at this example right here, I'll show you an example. Look at how each block on this wall, or each, whatever you call them, I'll call them blocks, they're the exact same. They just copy and pasted the same blocks over and over again. This is like just lazy game developing. At least they could have rotated the block and made it look a little different, but they couldn't even do that. And I've seen this. I mean, this is, evident throughout this entire game, and that to me is very disappointing, especially for a brand new AAA PS4 game. Very bad. The graphics are very dated. It's very apparent that this started off as a PS3 game, and unfortunately, it doesn't really seem like it made any type of graphical improvements between the PS3 version that it was originally developed for to a PS4 game as far as graphic standards go. The camera angles are obstructively annoying. Again, I don't know how else to put it. You can move the camera, with your right analog stick, you can move it around, but it also moves on its own at the same time, which is very awkward, and you tend to miss a lot of the action because the camera is not where it should be. Like, for example, if you're on the back of, the beast, whose name's Trico, and he's jumping from one ledge to another, you want to see that leap. You want to see that epic jump. But because the camera angles suck in this game, you're probably going to be looking at the beast's butt while he flies through the air and not see anything remotely close to what's happening. Big design flaw in my opinion. I don't know why they had the camera so wonky in this game, but it just was weird. There's also instances where you might die because the camera decides to pan around when you're not expecting it to. Basically, like, for example, if you're about to jump to a ledge that's on the left, and as you're about to jump, the camera pans around, well, left isn't left anymore because the camera changed. So now you're going to end up jumping off the edge instead of to the platform you're meant to jump to. That happened to me quite a few times. Very annoying. I really don't know what else to say about it. This huge flaw in the game. The camera angles are extremely annoying. To add to that, another annoying thing, and I know these are things that you guys probably read in the reviews already, but I'm just going to elaborate on them a little bit because I feel like reviews were kind of skimming over them and not really giving them much attention. But these are important things to me. These are things that really matter in a video game. And they ultimately made this game pretty much, I wouldn't say unenjoyable, but definitely didn't live up to the hype. But the next thing is the movement mechanics. Very frustrating movement mechanics. Just the whole control scheme in this game is annoying, and it's fixed too, so you got to get used to it. You can't change it or anything like that. So get used to pressing triangle to jump. I felt like that was very awkward. I did eventually get used to it, but my brain was naturally programmed to press X to jump because that's basically like a common standard in video games these days and has been for years. So pressing triangle to jump was very awkward for me. Did get used to it, like I said, but heck, man, why should we have to get used to things? It should just come naturally to us and feel natural when we're playing a video game, because if it doesn't, it takes you out of the experience. The immersion's not there, and to me, that's just a big downfall. Another thing that I felt was a big downfall in this game that I didn't see any reviews mention is the game pacing. Now, the pacing overall is fine, but the pacing is just out of your control a lot of the time, and that is a big downfall for me. Now, I'll use an example. The Order 1886. The pacing in that game was out of your control a lot because there was a lot of cutscenes, a lot of cinematics. So during those times, you're not really controlling the pace of the game. But in those situations, at least the story's progressing. At least you're watching something. Something's happening. In this game, the pacing is often controlled by Trico. Now, Trico has a mind of his own, and I'll get into that in a minute, but by adding this sort of realistic factor into the game, they also added some frustration along with it. So, for example, you'll come across several scenarios where you need Trico's help to get to a higher platform or a doorway that's up, beyond your reach. But until very, very late in the game, this creature is rather disobedient. Now, there was one point in time where I spent a good 10 minutes, if not longer, waiting for this creature to stand on his hind legs just so I can reach a doorway that was like 50 feet or so up this wall. There was nowhere to climb. I couldn't jump up there. The only way I can get up there was to climb on this thing's back, and it had to stand on its hind legs. And there was nothing I can do. I mean, there's certain commands you can give it. You can point and say like, "Hey boy, go over there," kind of thing. I'm speaking in a different language, obviously, but you can kind of get the gist of what he's saying. You can pet him and try to comfort him and stuff like that. I tried all these different things, and this animal would not budge. So I sat there for 10 minutes trying to get this thing to move, trying to tell it where to go, where we need to go. We need to get to that door up there. Come on, buddy, let's go, let's go. 10 minutes later, he finally decides to get up on his hind legs and prop me up so I can reach the door. But, I mean, I felt helpless. I felt useless. I felt like I had no control at all just over the progression of my game. I knew where I had to go. I knew what I had to do, and I couldn't do it because this AI character wouldn't let me do it. That to me was very frustrating, and that happened several times throughout this game. It's like the first 10 hours of the game was me trying to get Trico to do what I wanted him to do. Sometimes he listened, most of the time he didn't. After that, the last 2 or 3 hours of the game, he was much more obedient, but that first 10, 11 hours was very, very annoying. There's an abundance of those parts, and I'm like, oh God, come on, guy, just do what I'm telling you to do. I want to go, I want to progress. So yeah, that was annoying. So what else? What about the puzzles? Okay, this game, it was described to me as a puzzle game. And I'm not the hugest fan of puzzle games, but I like puzzles. I'm not against puzzles, I just don't love them, you know what I'm saying? But I can say that during my playtime, I didn't really encounter anything that remotely felt anything close to a puzzle. And by puzzle, I'm talking about like, God of War style of puzzles or Uncharted style of puzzles, things, you have to actually think or move things around or, it takes some sort of mind power to solve them. This game, it doesn't have anything like that. This game doesn't have what I would call a puzzle. This game basically has, how to get from point A to point B. That's basically it. You got to climb on some beams, shimmy across some ledges, walk across some narrow, rickety things, and then you can destroy some of these giant mosaic glass dream catcher things that Trico's afraid of. It's not difficult. It's not challenging. It's definitely not puzzling. Overall, it's basically just time consuming. Like, I don't know. It's just stuff that just spends time, makes you spend time in the game. I mean, they're not puzzles in my opinion. But what else is there? What about the enemies? Okay, what about any challenges in the game? This game really just wasn't that challenging overall. The puzzles were easy, if you even want to call them puzzles. The enemies, they're one-dimensional, they're mediocre, they're repetitive. The game really doesn't even have any combat in the traditional sense of the word. Yes, there's a couple, like literally 2 things you can do to destroy enemies. But for the most part, Trico does all the dirty work, and you basically just have to run around and don't get caught by these creepy soldier guys until Trico smashes them all to bits. That's basically what it is. He fights and you run around watching. Like I said, there's a couple odd parts where you have to do a couple things, and literally there's like 2 other things you can do other than run that will help you destroy enemies. But I mean, Trico destroys pretty much every enemy in the game other than a select few. That to me was also, kind of a downfall. I feel like a lot of this game was watching an AI character play the game for you, which I don't know how anybody can think that's a good thing. To me, it's not a good thing at all. But I mean, people are liking it, so I don't know, what can I say, right? Let's see, what else didn't I like about it? I know I'm nitpicking a lot here, but the level design. There was very little diversity in terms of level design. I mean, in a playthrough that lasted me about, I don't know, 13, 14 hours, which is a good amount of time, mind you. I'm not going to say that's, too short or anything like that. I like that length. But I felt like the first 10 hours or so were all within the same area, the same building types, the same color palette, the same textures, the overall same atmosphere and the same presentation. Then the last 2 to 3 hours of the game was in kind of a new level. It was different looking structures, different environments, different color palette. And that was basically it. It was basically 2 kind of areas that you're in, and that was it. But this overall lack of diversity and level design was just unappealing to me. I wish they had more colors, more areas, more something to make it seem like I wasn't just playing the same part over and over and over again for 10 hours, because that's kind of what it felt like to me. There was no diversity in the gameplay. There was no diversity in the aesthetic. So, I don't know, that fell flat for me. So anyways, what about the crowning jewel? Okay, let's get into this. What about the crowning jewel of this game? The relationship between the 2 main characters was supposed to be the main selling point of this game. So how well was it? Well, the bond between the boy and the beast, in my opinion, doesn't really even extend past what we've seen in the trailers and the demos. It doesn't. Okay, there's really not much more in the game that happens that, I mean, you can kind of use your imagination. There's going to be some sentimental moments. There's going to be some like kind of heart tuggy on the strings moment. That's going to happen, right? But I feel like, for example, a bond, for example, between Joel and Ellie in The Last of Us, that was sort of a bar setter in my opinion. And anything that comes after that should at least meet, if not exceed, that type of bond. And I don't feel like the bond between the boy and Trico was quite at that level. Some other examples could be possibly the characters in the Walking Dead Telltale series. I haven't played them, but I've heard that the characters in that game are really, you get really attached to them, and the bonds with those characters are really heartfelt and heartwarming, and you really get a sense of emotion when you're playing that game. Another example could be the plot of Ori and the Blind Forest. I heard that was a very heartfelt game where you really feel attached to the characters and the bond between the characters. Those are just a couple examples of, games that tugged on the heartstrings. And I feel that The Last Guardian just fell a bit short in what was supposed to be its crowning achievement in that sense. And that's unfortunate because that's kind of one of the main reasons that I bought the game. I was hoping it would really, draw me in and really get me to feel for these characters, and it just didn't. Now, overall, this experience felt like an early gen PS3 game that was ported, not remastered, just ported to the PS4. Now, the whole adventure just kind of fell flat to me, and I never really did get a true sense of friendship or companionship between the boy and Trico, but ultimately, I don't blame that on the story or the characters themselves. I blame it on the bad controls, the horribly archaic graphics, and the constantly annoying camera angles, because each of those things were just persistently annoying throughout the game, and it literally just prevented me from sitting there and just simply enjoying the experience. Those things should have been polished, they should have been thought out, they should have been thought through, and they should have been fixed. There's no reason why, with a 10-year development cycle, why those things should have been like they were, and it literally just made the game, it made me unable to just immerse myself and enjoy it. I mean, like, quite frankly, after this long-ass development cycle this game went through, before finally being released, I just don't think the developers, Gen Design, they don't have any excuse for releasing such an unpolished game. The game feels unpolished. It's unpolished aesthetically, it's unpolished technically, and that just makes it unappealing. Now, if I were hyped for this game, like a lot of you guys were hyped for this game for like 10 years, I would be vastly, vastly disappointed in this final product. Now look, I'm slamming this game pretty hard right now, but you gotta get the truth somewhere, right? And I'm seeing all these reviews, these big reviews from these sites, and they keep seeming to want to either leave out these flaws or they just kind of skim over them. They refuse to deduct points for these flaws. But I'm just giving it to y'all straight because in the end, You know, a lot of people are hyped for this game, and I don't think it's living up to the standard that current AAA PS4 games are living up to. It's just not. And if somebody's got reasons or some sort of, you know, some sort of any kind of reason why it is living up to today's standards of gaming, I'd like to hear it, because this feels like a completely dated game to me. But yo, I'm going to end this on a good note. I'm going to try to end this on a good note because that's just how I like to do it. Now, the best thing about this game, the most impressive thing about this game is Trico. Undeniably, but it's the believability of the animal. I've never seen a more realistic AI creature in a video game ever before. They definitely nailed that aspect of it. I mean, just his behavior, his mannerisms, they're simply just amazing. Like, there's no other way to put it. It is, bar none, the best creature I've ever seen in a game as far as the AI goes. But for me, unfortunately, that alone wasn't enough to save this whole game for me. Another great thing, which also ties into that, was just the overall animations in this game were like top notch. Aside from, you know, the frame drops, the animations were very fluid, very realistic. You know, the wind blowing Trico's feathers, or the boy's clothing, or even leaves and trees blowing around outside from the wind. I felt like the physics and the realism of those types of animations were very well done. Even when, you know, Trico would get wet, he'd get, you know, dive into a pond of water and get wet, and he'd come out and he would shake himself off like a dog. That animation alone was very, very well done, very realistic looking. And, you know, at least I can say that about the game was really good. But that alone also was hindered by frame rate issues and, you know, performance issues and the like. Anyways, guys, that's pretty much all I got to say about it. I mean, I didn't want to just make a video just slamming the hell out of this game, but that's pretty much all I can do. There's not a lot of good stuff to say about it. I've seen the reviews, I'm seeing what people are saying about it, and I don't get it. I just don't understand why people are overlooking all these severe flaws. This game is not, it's so unpolished and it's so dated feeling that it's just hard for me to enjoy. Maybe it's just me, it's probably just me, but hey, I don't know. If you're hyped for this game, I would advise you to stay hyped. I mean, it seems like a lot of people really are enjoying it, and I'm glad they are, and I'm not trying to be a buzzkill, but I mean, I just really want to, I guess, warn people about the downfalls this game suffers from, because it seems like the reviews that I saw, the websites and stuff like that, they keep kind of skimming over these things or not really, you know, telling how annoying these things really are. But I mean, it is what it is. But I guess that's going to be it for me for now. So, you know, hit that like button, subscribe if you're new to my channel. If you guys are playing this game, if you're hyped for this game, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. But thank you guys for watching. I'm Vile Self. Until next time, villains. Later.